I have voted in every presidential election since I was 18. And I have voted for a Democrat in every presidential election. I cannot vote for Kamala Harris. I can't. I was looking for an excuse to support Kamala Harris. A clue, a hint. There's nothing. So we're put in this horrible position. Do we vote for someone that is open about hating us? Or do we vote for someone whose policies make it clear that they hate us?
There's this string of similarity between the black community and the immigrant community. We're almost not allowed to talk about, and it's feeling like victims.
I'm sensitive to that because I have worked with hundreds of families who've had their husbands, fathers killed by police in this country. Is it our main problem? Is it our only problem? Of course not. And the problem comes when we focus so much on the thing that is one of our problems, but we have 10 other problems that we also have to focus on.
You know, there's this headline that you reverted to Islam, endorsing the Palestinian cause is shifting your career to something more safe. How does that make you feel in terms of people questioning your intentions?
It breaks my heart, man. I've seen African Americans say, Shaun has abandoned us. And I understand that it feels that way. This transition for me has been horrible for me professionally. I have lost almost everything.
What's one thing that you said that got you in most trouble?
I've never said this publicly, but
First off, before we start this episode, I want you to pause the video and recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all the martyrs and all the oppressed people that are in Palestine and Lebanon. During this tough time, we're losing a lot of family, a lot of friends. A lot of you that are listening lost family members. A lot of you that are listening know someone that lost a family member, that lost a house. So if you're Muslim, pause this video, please. Recite Surah Al-Fatiha for them. Pray for them. Don't forget them. If you're not Muslim, also send prayers in whatever way you send prayers. And hopefully the storm won't last for too long. For those of you who have been following the Palestinian issue, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Lebanon, you probably know about it since you were a little kid. Your parents told you about it. I mean, it was just culture that we know what happened. But in the West, a lot of people were not familiar with it. And to speak to them in their language in a way where they would understand it, you needed an influential figure in the West that would be able to shed light on it. And one of those main figures was Shaun King. Now, Shaun doesn't need too many introductions, but he's an activist, he's an author. He has been banned by Facebook, Instagram. He lost his platforms talking about the Palestinian issue. He reverted to Islam, and he was also an activist when it came to the black community. So there's a lot of things that I'm about to discuss with Shaun about him being banned, reverting to Islam, and the Palestinian issue, and what can really be done out of social media, outside of social media, to make a change. It was very interesting listening to Shaun's perspective on these things. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet. Your support is what keeps this going. I appreciate you. And with that being said, let's get the show started.
Welcome aboard Middle East Airlines.
والمتوجهة إلى
طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب
مدينة القدس العربية.
Shaun, salam alaikum.
Yeah, walaikum salam. Good to be here with you, man.
Of course, if we would have had this maybe a year ago, the response, maybe I would have started it with salam, but you reverted.
Yes,
and it's
yes.
like congratulations.
Yes. No.
Welcome to the brotherhood.
I'm honored. Yeah, it's the biggest honor of my life, and I would have still exchanged salam with you
Yes.
a year ago, but it would not have meant to me what it means now. You know, what I tell people is, I've been a friend of Muslims my entire life, and people knew me for this. I've spoken long before I became a Muslim. I spoke at Muslim conferences, events, and advocated for Muslims, but I did that as a friend, not as a Muslim. And being a Muslim just for these past 9 months has been 9 of the richest months of my life. And so I was always your brother, but now it's deeper.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. So, Shaun, the way I usually start this off is I like the soft introduction, but I feel like the world knows Shaun as one thing, but Shaun looks at himself as another thing. So the way I like to describe it is, if you look in the mirror, who is Shaun to Shaun?
Oh, that's easy. That's very easy because this thought. I mean, now I'm hardly on social media now. I've been banned from multiple platforms, but I never saw myself as a social media celebrity. Like I would we lived in Brooklyn for 10 years, and I would be on the train, and people would recognize me. And instead of saying, "There's Shaun King," or "I see Shaun King," I would hear them, and they would say, "There's at Shaun King," as if at is my first name. Like I had to tell people, like, no, I am not at Shaun King.
That's crazy.
I'm Shaun. At is just my handle on Twitter or Instagram. I realized people associated me so much with social media, but that's not how I see myself. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing that I do is go wake up my children. We'll pray. I've been a dad. I'm 45. I've been a dad my entire adult life. My wife and I, we were not Muslim, so I've been with my wife since we were 15 and 16. We were parents when we were 19 and 20.
Very young.
And very young. And so before I ever see myself as any kind of celebrity, or even as an activist or an organizer or a journalist, I've always seen myself first as a father and a husband. And those two things have way more to do with my day-to-day life, even than activism or journalism. Those are things I do, but it's not quite who I am. Instagram was a tool I used, but I'm not at Shaun King. That's an account. And so you can delete that account, but you don't delete me. And so I'm still a father. I'm still a husband. But I think one thing that's changed for me, I was a pastor for many years, for almost 15 years.
Oh, really?
And I went to Christian seminary. I was a senior pastor, like the lead pastor of a church. But even then, I think I saw myself first as a son, a father, a husband, and yes, as a Christian. But as a Muslim, I think I see myself now first as a Muslim, then a husband, then a father. Like for my wife and I both, Islam has very quickly become like a central part of how we see ourselves.
Why do you think it jumped up the priority list in your identity paradigm?
This is not, most of my family is Christian, and many Christians have been very good to me. So this is not my attempt to disparage Christianity, but it's not always clear to Christians what it means to be a Christian. So if you say you're a Christian and you say you believe, for most people, that's enough. There aren't, in Christianity as we know it, like 5 pillars like we have in Islam. To be a Muslim very much means to live your life in a very particular way. And part of why my wife and I became Muslims was there was so little clarity, so little agreement on what it meant to be a Christian that we got lost in that. Whereas for us, now there are thousands of rules and laws in Islam that I'm not speaking of that, but in the most basic way, we are clear on what it means to be a Muslim. And so praying deliberately 5 times or more a day, it changes you. It changes how you see your schedule. It changes what you value. Prayer is now probably like the anchor of our daily life. And it's hard, for instance, my wife and I try to pray together for all of our prayers. If I'm home, we'll do them together. It's hard to be mad at each other when you also have to pray together. It's hard to have a grudge with your husband or wife and then that person has to lead in prayer. And so it's very quickly become a central part of how we see ourselves.
That's such a cool thing that I don't think I've ever thought about. Maybe because we've been in it for like since we were born, we never thought about like, oh, let's make it a rule that we always pray together. It was like, okay, it's whenever it's time for prayer, I go into my room, I pray, my sister prays in the other room, my mom prays, whatever. I never thought about, okay, if we have to pray together, it makes it very difficult to be upset.
In fact, the only 2 times that we don't pray now, our oldest daughter became a Muslim, and she lives in Atlanta, but she spent most of the summer with us. Our niece, who lives with us, also, she's 17, she became a Muslim. So when the 4 of us could pray together, we are the 4 Muslim members of my immediate family. So half of us in the house are Muslims and half are Christians. And anytime that, unless our schedules don't permit, we'll pray together. The only reasons we don't pray together is if we have some kind of beef with each other and we aren't wanting to be around each other. And that feels wrong. Like it feels disrespectful to Allah to not pray together because we're mad at each other.
Your prayer feels a little off.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you've brought your whole heart to it. You've brought something painful with you. And so, but that's happened. We're real people. My wife and I argue and disagree as all married couples do. But unless our schedules get in the way, or unless we're having some kind of petty, or not even petty, like we may have a real disagreement, and that could get in the way. But what we have found is when we're willing to get past that and pray together, even pray with our daughters, it brings us all closer together for sure. And for us being new Muslims, it does that even more.
How beautiful.
Yeah, we love it.
We're going to talk about Islam definitely, but I kind of want to take you back because now recently, especially like my circle and like the Arab American circle, just the West has seen you this past year as the Palestinian activist, fighting for the rights of the Palestinians, the genocide that's happening on Gaza. But before that, you were kind of known for like the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay?
Sure.
There's this string of similarity between, I feel like between the black community and the immigrant community.
Oh, for sure, man.
And minority communities definitely both need help, definitely. But there's this string that we're almost not allowed to talk about, and it's feeling like victims. Okay. And this sometimes will get you in trouble when you say it, but I feel like a lot of immigrants, and I'll speak on behalf of the immigrants, that they actually go about their days feeling like victims, feeling like the world owes them something, feeling like because they came to America and they're not white, that they kind of need handouts, or they won't live up to their full potential, and they'll use that immigrant mentality as blockades on their potential. And I feel like, and I never thought that way about the black community until I heard Candace Owens talk about it, and then I was like, there is a similar string here.
Let me speak on that.
Yeah.
While I've actually been very proud of a lot of the things I've seen from Candace Owens over the past 6 months. But before those 6 months, she had often been atrocious on issues, not just atrocious, she had been blatantly disrespectful on issues facing African Americans. So much so that she really made herself an enemy of African Americans. And like you would struggle 6 months ago to find a diverse group of African Americans that respected her.
Really?
And so it was painful for some African Americans to then see her clearly and boldly advocate for Palestinians in a way that she doesn't do for African Americans. So I want to say that I've never said this publicly, but I reached out to her. She has spoken ill of me many, many times, and I reached out to her through social media. I never heard back from her, to tell her that I was proud of the stance that she had been taking. and I wanted to see if we could discuss these differences. But in the United States, African Americans are frequently victims of police brutality, mass incarceration, of underdevelopment in our communities, of mistreatment in many different ways. Like racism is real, discrimination is real, and immigrants also face a lot of very real challenges. The problem, in my opinion, the problem comes when those challenges from the outside become your sole focus. And for me, it's going to always be difficult to advance your community or your people if you don't do two things. Yes, you have to focus on the injustice from the outside coming in, but we also have to make smart, empowering decisions that have nothing to do with those who mistreat us, that are just about how do we build solutions for ourselves. And so there is this thing, people speak of, and you referenced it, that they may call a victim mentality. I'm sensitive to that because I have worked with hundreds of families. I've worked with at least 500 families, almost exclusively African American, who've had their husbands, fathers, daughters, sons, mothers killed by police in this country. And that's a crisis. It's a real problem. Is it our main problem? Is it our only problem? Of course not. And the problem comes when we focus so much on the thing that is one of our problems, but we have 10 other problems that we also have to focus on. And if we ignore these 10 problems that are just our own at the expense of this one problem caused by outsiders, we lose. And immigrants, African Americans, Muslims, all of us, you have to find a way to focus on justice from the injustice that happens, but you also have to build your own independent solutions. And yet, I would say it's difficult to build those solutions when there is so much pressure from the outside. Let me give a quick illustration.
Please.
So over the past year, Muslims just in the United States have given now nearly $2 billion to charity. And I mean, an enormous amount of money. And we primarily have to give that because our sisters and brothers around the world are frequently starving. I mean, literally starving to death, have no food, no clean water. So we have to spend billions of dollars to basically just put a meal on someone's table. And ultimately, if we didn't spend $2 billion on aid, let's say we spent $1.75 billion on aid and $250 million on political power, we may not have to give as much in aid. And here's why. Most of the reason Muslims have to constantly give money for aid, now I'm raising money for Lebanon. Over 300,000 people have been moved out of their homes in Lebanon just in a week.
My family, one of them.
Yes. And so, but here's the thing. It's bad policy that created this. It was bad political decisions from people that don't respect us, don't feel like they owe us anything. They can make horrible policy decisions in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank. And because we put almost all of our money into aid that's necessary, we end up being victims of horrible foreign policy that then requires us to give all our money to aid.
What you're saying is let's put that money into our policy. Some people that will actually fix the problem will be in those positions, and then let's say you wouldn't be having to raise, let's just give a figure of $30,000. Right now you would maybe have to raise $10,000.
So
is that did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, on October the 6th, Gaza needed support, but not like now. And the reality is, that people make horrible decisions. Politicians in the United States, in the UK, in Germany, and other countries around the world make atrocious decisions that affect us in the worst ways, and we then have to spend all of our money to repair the destruction, to feed the people, to make sure they have the basic necessities, where if we just spent a fraction of that money building political power. I was actually shocked when I saw AIPAC's budget. We've made AIPAC out to be a boogeyman. I think they do evil work, but their budget, I think their budget was like $120 million. Well, we just gave $2 billion just in the United States. Like, we could immediately, if 10% of our money went to smart ways to build political power, we would have the same or more political power than any other group. But we're constantly having to put out fires. We're constantly in a state of emergency. And so when you talk about the similarities between African Americans and immigrants, this is the same as true. It's hard to rebuild your community when things are constantly happening to undermine your community. So we have to do both at the same time. We have to say, how do we support people who are homeless, struggling, hungry, in need of clothes? I went to a clothes bank here in Detroit today. How do we do that while also making sure those who make policy decisions respect us much more? Like, I just learned, and you may have learned earlier this week, that 2 government agencies told the Secretary of State that Israel was deliberately, purposely making sure that no aid got into Gaza. Well, it is American law that you are not allowed to send weapons to a country that even impedes any aid coming through. Well, 2 different U.S. government agencies sent him a report. These reports have been released saying, yes. I mean, we didn't need reports. It's all over. I see it every day.
Yeah.
They deliberately block. They've blown up. Rafah is now rubble. There's virtually no way to get in, and they've laughed about it publicly. Well, Anthony Blinken then the Secretary of State, went before Congress and said to Congress, no, we never saw that. That was not our determination. When his own department did determine this. And when I saw that, I just thought, not only is this man a liar, and he's an open Zionist, but he has no respect, not only for us, but he has no respect even for the truth.
For human life,
yes,
in its essence.
Politicians, and I would put him in there, he's a political creature. He's a political animal like anybody else that works for the White House. They respond to the people that donate to their projects and campaigns. They respond to the people they know. And we have to ask ourselves, why do so many people not know us, not respect us, and what can we do to change that? And, there are days where I see Sister Rashida Tlaib, who I knew her before she was in Congress, where I feel there are days where she's almost speaking alone. And in fact, the 2 biggest supporters she had in Congress would be Congresswoman Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, and AIPAC organized and caused them to lose their elections. And we have to say, we don't have to study their tactics. We have to say, how do we build political power? And some of it is using our money much differently than we do right now.
You know when something is broken or is not working correctly and you don't know how to deal with it. So you just try multiple different things and just cross your fingers and hope it works. That's how we kind of treat our bodies. That's how we kind of treat our health. We listen to a lot of noise when it comes to this stuff, and we try all of them and we don't know what works and what doesn't. With Whoop, it actually measures the most important vitals that you need to understand your body, to understand your health, to understand your habits. And according to those habits, you can do adjustments and improve them from there. Because you're a listener of this podcast, you get to try Whoop out for a month for free. So you get it for a month, try it. If you don't like it, you just return it. no strings attached. But I guarantee that it will change your life exactly how it changed mine. Go to join.whoop.com/notfromhere to take the first step towards bettering your health. And now, back to the episode. I listened to something the other day that, to your point, was saying if Muslims are so upset that what's happening in the United States and APAC and how like it's a major Israel lobby, they were like it comes down to the Israeli supporters are paying the money and they're putting the people that they want in policy, and they're getting the policies that they want. It's smart on their end. They were like, if Muslims are so upset about it, pay that money.
Think of the Israeli return on investment. Let's round it up. Let's say that AIPAC raised and spent $120 million, and organizations similar to AIPAC gave another $80 million. So that's $200 million. Well, just in the past 11 months, Israel has received over $100 billion in aid. That $200 million returned back to them $2 billion. So when the $2 billion we get rewards from Allah. We'll be rewarded in Jannah. Our sisters and brothers have food and have supplies. So our return on investment is altogether different than their return on investment. We have to find a way to confidently do both things at the same time.
Because it's weird, because if you get a phone call, or I get a phone call and my mom's like, hey, there's this family, they need, like their kids need to be in schools, I need $1,000. I'm not gonna be like, hey mom, wait, we're just doing this policy thing. No, I'm gonna be like, here, this is $1,000. Let them be in school. School's about to start. So there's always this urgency with the help, because it's always last second.
And we have to. It's not only our obligation. These are our loved ones. This is your family. Mm-hmm. I have grown so close with so many sisters and brothers in Gaza and the West Bank, to where if they ask me for help and I'm able to do it, there's nothing I would rather. I often feel emasculated that I'm not able to be there with my own hands to help.
You feel like your hands are tied. You can't do anything.
And so, when I am able to help, my wife and I both have regularly, spent our last dollar, not on political power, but on aid, on supporting orphans and widows and children. And so we're having to move from crisis to crisis. And the way I would explain it, and I used to teach it like this, there's kind of a inside game and an outside game. The outside game is about public opinion. It's about marching and protesting. It's about social media. We're winning that. The outside game for Palestine, we win. The public opinion has radically changed. The entire world, the IQ of the entire world has gone up significantly. Men and women, including my own mother, who could not point out Gaza on a map. Now my mother knows the ABCs of how Gaza is, how it came to be in the current predicament it's in. And this is a 75-year-old white woman in the South. She is indicative of people all over the world that know more than they've ever known. So we have that. Our IQ has gone up, but our ability to actually change the situation, we're losing the inside game. And so what I've learned, and it's painful, is that Israel, I think, made a strategic decision. Once they saw how successful we were online, normally PR is their thing. We have demolished them publicly. Benjamin Netanyahu gave a speech in the United Nations this week, and almost every diplomat from all over the world got up and walked out. And I'm talking about Europeans got up and walked out, Asians from around the world, Africans from around the world. These were not just Muslim leaders. Almost no one stayed. They view him as a liar. They view Israel as a terrorist state. Almost 90% of the world wants an independent Palestinian state. And so Israel, while they're isolated publicly, I think they said, listen, we're willing to lose the public battle as long as we win the private battle. And they're confident that as long as those weapons keep being sent to them, they're okay.
Yeah.
And so the inside battle, we're getting crushed. The public battle, they're getting crushed.
What do you do?
Well,
That's hard because everyone was like, okay, we're on social media. After you post 9 stories, the difference between someone seeing number 9 and number 12 is not that significant. You know, when it's easy, just sitting all day, just reshare every post you see. But like you said, that is insignificant when you look at it in the terms of we're coming towards the year anniversary of it happening.
in a few days. Right.
And Lebanon's the worst it's ever been. Gaza's the worst it's ever been. We saw very little improvement, if any, in the circumstances of the war. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Absolutely.
And then, so then it makes you think, then how much do they care about public opinion anyways? If the whole world is against them, they're still doing the same things.
I think they used to. I think they used to care deeply about what the world... I think they were shocked at how quickly, for instance, teenagers on TikTok saw their injustices and called them out for it. Like, Israel was operating from like a 2005 playbook for PR. Mm-hmm. And I think they never saw children across social media, young people in Gaza who are teenagers and in their early 20s. They never imagined that they would film all of these atrocities, because that's never happened in a genocide before. So if you're thinking of previous genocides, never did everyone have a cell phone. And for people that aren't aware, before October the 7th, Palestinians were deeply connected to social media because in some ways you're trapped in Gaza. And social media was the way that Palestinians in Gaza could escape and see the world, connect with the world, because most of them knew if I ever leave this small patch of land, they'll never let me back in.
Absolutely.
And so they were one of the most highly connected groups of people on social media in the world. And so as soon as this genocide began, Palestinians started telling their own stories across social media. And then young people all over the world started finding ways to speak out themselves. And Israel, I don't think, saw that coming and very quickly saw themselves losing. Like the best illustration would be there was this famous moment where this Israeli general is explaining about this list on the wall, and he says, like, this is a list of terrorist names, and he starts naming them. It was just a calendar. And all it was
Monday through Friday.
Yeah, it just said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And within a few hours, children, I mean like high school students, did videos making a mockery of this man. And his video got almost no play. These videos from children were seen hundreds of millions of times. And so they started losing that battle. And man, I think they just said, we'll give up on that battle. They still try. Now everyone knows. They continue to lie about the facts. They don't even tell those lies as much anymore. They are content if they are winning on the military front and they're winning these private battles with politicians behind the scenes. Kamala Harris would be the best example. I think she is smarter than Joe Biden. I think she is qualitatively a better human being than Joe Biden. I don't know that she's a Zionist, but she's married to a Zionist. And she has publicly spoken at AIPAC's conference. And she said how much she loved AIPAC, how much she's loved them her whole life. She's only a little bit better than Joe Biden. And she has openly said there's not a single policy that she would change. She said this.
Yeah.
Every policy Joe Biden has today on Gaza and on Lebanon, she's openly said, I won't change those. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, who are we influencing? If the person we're told is a better alternative to Joe Biden is only better in name only, is only better in culture. Listen.
The concept of Kamala, maybe people would think would be better, but look on paper, pen and paper, it's the exact same thing. So it comes to a point to where no, like this happened last election, and you were like, no, vote for the lesser of two evils. But at this point, honestly, it came out to be that there was no lesser. The lesser that we thought would be, and Joe Biden did not turn out to be the lesser. You know, my family are on the street in Lebanon. Our houses are bombed. Like, we don't have houses anymore. You know, like
And
this is not lesser.
that didn't happen. That didn't. And here's the thing. I hesitate to say that I hate someone. Donald Trump is a horrible human being. Donald Trump has hated Muslims for a very long time. I don't even know where that comes from. He and his children have spoken ill of me on multiple occasions, have made my family less safe. But I have to say, the atrocities that we see happening today in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the West Bank, those atrocities, they didn't happen under his administration. They happened under this Democratic administration. And what Democrats want to say is, well, you know it will be worse under Trump. Well, I don't know that. He has now publicly come out to say, in essence, yes, it would be worse under me. I would kill as many He has basically said this would be over in a few days if he was in power, not because he would negotiate some treaty. He suggests he would just completely kill everyone. So we're put in this horrible position. Do we vote for someone that is open about hating us, or do we vote for someone whose policies make it clear that they hate us? And
you're not going to win that battle, in my opinion.
No, and for the first, I have voted. I'm 45. I have voted in every presidential election since I was 18, and I have voted for a Democrat in every presidential election. And I said publicly, and I received so much hate for it, I cannot vote for Kamala Harris. I can't. I wish I could. And it was voters in Michigan that tried so hard to get her to do two basic things. The first is, at the Democratic National Convention, just have one Palestinian speaker speak. They even said it could be a supporter of yours. We don't even have to name the person. You find them, you pick them, and have them speak. And they refused. They had over a dozen Jewish speakers. At the Democratic National Convention, they had Republicans speak. So they had Republicans speak, but not a single Palestinian. And millions of Muslims around the country were offended. To give her another chance, they said, please, by September 15th, which is just a few weeks ago now, we just want you to meet with one Palestinian family. And she refused. I feel like I would be spitting in their faces to say, listen, I know she wouldn't even meet with you. I know they wouldn't have a single one of us speak at the conference, but she still has my vote. Here's how I framed it. About half of my audience is African American. And many African Americans said to me, Shaun, you do understand that on a lot of other issues, she is better than Donald Trump. And I agree with this. They said, so can't you support her, even though she and Trump are similar on Gaza? Can't you still support her because she's better on these other 10 issues? And here's how I return that back to my African American followers. If this genocide was not against Palestinians, but if Joe Biden and his White House, which includes Kamala Harris, if they were funding and leading a genocide against African Americans, would you still vote for her? If everything they've done to Palestinians, they did none of it to Palestinians, but they did it here in Detroit to African Americans, in Los Angeles to if they bombed African Americans, if Kamala Harris and Joe Biden bombed African Americans all over the country, but still had some good views, would you still support them? I have not yet found a single African American voter who says yes, I would.
No one will.
No, you would not. And so then that takes us to a very uncomfortable point. If you would not vote for someone who would do that to your own people, how do you feel about being willing to support them because they're doing it to somebody other than you? And for me, I can't get over that. Before I was a Muslim, I could not have gotten over that. But today as a Muslim, I could never Here's the thing. People who oversee genocide always have some good political ideas that appeal to people. Genocidal monsters frequently have good economic ideas. They are talking about, listen, if we kill them, we'll have more jobs. If we isolate them, we'll have this land. If we do this, our country will be safer. So they may have ideas that appeal to you, but you can't support a politician that has done what these men and women have done. I don't feel good about it. Like, if either one of them win, we're still in trouble. So I can't support them. And I was looking for an excuse to support Kamala Harris, a clue, a hint, an idea that maybe she would do something different. There's nothing.
Are you saying might be the first time that you don't vote?
I will vote in every election except for the presidential election. I may vote for a third-party candidate as president. I will primarily vote for Democrats running for other offices in my city and town. I know them. They're good people. I will vote in congressional races and Senate races and other local school board races. But in New Jersey, it is almost guaranteed that Kamala Harris will win the nomination from New Jersey, unlike Michigan, where it's a battleground state. And so I have the privilege of not being able to say I'm not voting for her, and it won't overturn the election in any way. But
you know in good conscience that you personally, as Shaun, I did not contribute with my vote to that.
I can't. And I'll say this, and I'll say it up until the second before I vote. If I thought credibly, honestly, that she was going to do something substantively different, and she said as much, and I believed it, I would not only vote for her, I would campaign for her. Mm-hmm. If she said, and she meant it, listen, I did not know 2 months ago what I know today. How I felt 2 months ago, things have changed. All of us feel this way. We all change. I have met with Muslim and Palestinian leaders. My view on this has changed. I see this as a genocide, and I cannot in good... Here's my question. Did she see those reports from the State Department and U.S. Aid, two government agencies? Did she see the reports saying that aid was being deliberately blocked? Like me and you, I didn't need to see the reports. I saw them blocking. They openly admitted they were blocking aid. I didn't even need a report. But their own agencies. So either she saw the report and also ignored it, or she's so aloof she never even saw the report. And so either one I have a problem with.
Other, yeah.
And if she could change substantively, which I don't believe this is going to happen, I think she's making a political decision that she's willing to do without most of our votes, and she believes she can win without us. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that she'll do anything to win our votes.
I absolutely agree with you. Shaun, I want to ask you a question when it comes to activism. I mean, activism is such it's a vague topic in general. And what are the standards that you have personally for you? What are the things that you look for before you start campaigning for like this specific issue or that specific issue? Like, because it's so vast, and here's the tricky part is you could learn so much about one subject from one side and then talk about it, and then you'll have the other side mob you because they think that you didn't even recognize their part of the story in a way.
So as an activist, there are a few philosophies that I have that have helped me make decisions on what I can and can't do. Typically, and I've taught classes and workshops on this, you can only effectively fight in one or two battles at the same time. And the truth is, this world is so unjust that there are hundreds of issues that do deserve your attention. Let me give you an example. Animals are being starved to death and killed in Gaza. And what I've learned is even in the Quran and in Hadiths, it speaks about not mistreating animals. It's ugly. I've seen horses and camels be bombed. I've seen dogs scavenging on dead bodies. Just an atrocious. For animals, Gaza is also painful. Someone needs to make that their issue. It's not my issue.
Interesting.
It's not. I care about it. I love animals. My family loves animals. I care about the environment. I used to work for an environmental agency called Global Green. This genocide is terrible for the environment in Gaza. It's terrible for the soil. It's terrible for the water. It's terrible for the crops. We don't even know how much poison from the tens of thousands of bombs and missiles that they've dropped, how much that's poisoned the land. I care about that, but I don't have time for that to be my issue. Here's how I've taught it. We need people who feel called to fight for animals, to fight for animals. We need people who feel called to fight for the environment, to fight for the environment. I will then support them. I'll support people who believe in animal rights, who believe in environmental protections. I primarily fight for oppressed people around the world, and that's what I've done my entire life. It doesn't mean I don't care about animals or the environment or a host of other issues, but I can't effectively fight for the environment, for animals, for people in Gaza and people in Lebanon and people in Yemen and Syria, and fight for my own people in the United States at the same time. So I typically am hyper-focused because it's what allows me to actually be effective. And so for the past 11 months, I've almost exclusively fought for Palestinians because I thought it was the single biggest crisis and emergency in the world. But what that's meant is it means I now have to say no to so many other people who deserve not just my attention, but deserve support.
Yeah, they need a voice.
So I've seen, and it breaks my heart, man. I've seen African Americans say, Shaun has abandoned us. And I understand that it feels that way. I have to say, I probably feel most similar in this moment to two people that have been good friends to me. The activist Linda Sarsour, who I've known now for almost 12 years, and the scholar Sheikh Omar Suleiman. Both Linda and Omar have fought for African Americans for years and years and years, and neither one of them are African American. Linda moved to Louisville, Kentucky to fight full time for Breonna Taylor. Now, while she was doing that, atrocities were still happening in Gaza, in the West Bank. She knew this. But now I feel this is my turn to do what I already saw Sheikh Omar do, to do what I already saw Linda do. They had fought tirelessly for us for years and years and years and never expected anything in return. Now this is my obligation. And I hope that there'll be a day where this genocide ends, where this destruction ends, and I'll be able to divert a lot of my time and attention back to the needs of African Americans in this country. But I'm also thinking of Nelson Mandela, whose relationships with Palestinians there's a long history of Africans around the world and Palestinians seeing each other as comrades. Huey Newton, who was the founder of the Black Panther Party, went to Gaza. African revolutionaries who overthrew colonial governments in Africa were often deep partners with Palestinians, including Nelson Mandela. And so politically, when we support each other, we're stronger. And
so you found that connection there.
Oh, yeah, man. And I learned this. I've told this story publicly a few times. All the way back in 2001, I was a college student. I was a student leader at Morehouse College in Atlanta. It's a school for young black men. This is where Martin Luther King went to college. And we went to Durban, South Africa for a United Nations conference. This was about 2 weeks before 9/11. And it was the United Nations Conference Against Racism, the first conference they ever had against racism. Almost every nation in the world was there. And this is before Twitter, before Facebook. The internet was still new. And I was a very well-known student. At that time, I was one of the most known student leaders in the world. When I got to South Africa, something hilarious happened. Everywhere we went, we were teenagers. Everywhere we went, the most popular people in the room were Palestinians. And we kept thinking, like, who are these people? And why do South Africans and people around the world, why do they love them so much?
Yeah.
Well, growing up in the American South, I knew almost nothing about Palestine. I had no idea the rich history between South Africa and Palestinians. Like, that history is deep. They supported Nelson Mandela before he was even in prison. When they were fighting against apartheid before he was ever arrested, Palestinians had his back. South Africans were trained by Palestinians on how to fight back against apartheid. So when we got to South Africa and saw these two groups of people have this deep love for each other, I think a lot that's where I learned about Palestinians. I didn't learn about Palestinians from the United States, from the American media.
It wasn't something new.
Yeah, I learned about them from South Africans. And so, I mean, I've had a heart for Palestinians. I'm almost at 25 years I've been fighting against this. Part of me is proud of that, and another part of me is disgusted that the same fight we had 25 years ago,
It's still going on
it's
today.
even worse today.
Yeah.
And
You know, there's this headline that I'm just going to mention real quick. And I want to know how you feel when you hear people talk like that about you.
Sure.
And it's when you reverted to Islam and like endorsing the Palestinian cause is you basically shifting to your career to something more safe. You know, like you reverted to Islam, you get this love from Muslims, and you talk about the Palestinian cause, and like you kind of switched from the Black community to the Muslim immigrant Palestinian community. And how does that make you feel in terms of people questioning your intentions when it comes to these issues?
Well, it's definitely a poor view of my history. I have an office at home. I'll do a video with this when I get home. Almost every award I've ever received in my life, I'm talking about before October 7th, almost every award I've ever received, every statue, every award I have on my shelves, I think 90% of them come from Muslims for work that I have done fighting for the safety and security of Muslims, not only in the United States, but all around the world. I think non-Muslims didn't know that I spoke at ICNA and ISNA 10 years ago. I used to speak at 3 or 4 CARE conferences. For people who don't know, that's the Council of American Islamic Relations. I used to speak at 3 or 4 of their conferences every year before I became a Muslim. So I didn't switch. I've been fighting for Palestinians my entire adult life. I first visited a masjid and considered becoming a Muslim in 1996 as a teenager. So if anything, if all you know about me is what you saw on social media, then maybe it's easy for you to think Shaun has switched.
Yeah.
He has changed.
Switching career paths.
No, but let me say, no, this transition for me has been horrible for me professionally. Anyone who says I did this because it benefits me, I have lost almost everything. I've lost my social media platforms. If I'm not banned on a platform, I'm so suppressed it's not even worth using. I used to be a vice president of social impact at a major media company. They fired me in December. So I lost my primary income. Most donors to the organizations that I manage left, and we have fired or let go almost all of our employees. professionally, this has only cost me. And the notion that I did this to advance my career was safer and healthier before I did this than it is now.
Why don't you go back?
Well, again, this is to me an emergency. I would not stop fighting against this genocide if I lost everything. Like, for me, one, as an American, I am literally funding this thing. And I feel that I owe it for any of us who live here in the United States, every day you pay taxes, that $100+ billion that we have sent, our money has been sent to Israel over the past 11 months, that would make Israel have the 4th largest American budget of any state in America. The only states that got more money in the past 11 months than Israel are New York, Texas, and California.
That's insane.
4th is Israel.
That's insane.
Their American budget is bigger than 46 states. So I'm paying for this. So I should fight against it because I'm a Muslim. I should fight against it because it's wrong, it's evil, it's unethical. I should fight against it because it affects people I know personally, that I care about and love. And I should fight against it because my tax dollars are literally paying for it. This is not something I see Americans say, that's their problem. I was like, no. You're funding it. It is your problem.
I agree. It would be their problem if America didn't have a hand in it. You know?
Yeah, but this is as much
is
an American genocide as it is an Israeli genocide.
Straight up.
The defense secretary in Israel said that this genocide would only have lasted 43 days if not for American weapons being sent over and over and over again.
It puts it into perspective.
Here we are 358 days later, and this man says we only could have done this for 43 days had they not kept sending us. And he even said the missiles and bombs we used on those first 43 days also came from them. And so I feel it's my obligation. Like, listen, I care about education in America. I care about housing in America. I care about mental health and drug addiction in America. What more could that $100 billion that we have sent to a country that is already wealthy, what more could that money be doing? It's in part because I care about African Americans that I feel I need to fight against this. And I'm also thinking strategically, I want not just Palestinians, but Muslims around the world to see someone fighting for them in the way that they have fought for us over and over and over again.
That's what your platform, I remember when you first started talking about it, and it was it was very refreshing to see someone that wasn't Arab or wasn't a Muslim use a big platform to talk about this, and it was like, oh wait, this is new. This person's going to introduce this issue to all these new people that otherwise would not have that big of influence. One thing I wanted to
go ahead. I'm sorry.
One thing I wanted to touch on is, you see how you're banned from everywhere, and it kind of puts us in a situation where free speech is there's a lot of question marks around free speech in this country, especially when it comes to social media.
Yep.
And we saw Twitter or X that now allows for free speech. It's the free speech platform. But I want to kind of get your thoughts about censorship, or what the social media platforms allow or don't allow. And I want to give you this example. It's Mark Zuckerberg meeting with Netanyahu to define what terrorism is.
Yeah.
So the guidelines for terrorism are set by Netanyahu. This is publicly. This is accessible publicly to everyone who wants to see it. So you start thinking about it, and it's not free speech. It's whatever they think free speech is.
So I can speak about this because my life and work is kind of at the center of this. I made an enormous mistake thinking that I was safe on Instagram. I have spoken at Facebook's headquarters before. I've been a guest speaker there multiple times. Mark Zuckerberg's wife, Priscilla, gave $1 million to my organization. I have, all the way back in 2010, Facebook featured me on their company blog for stuff I was doing on the platform. In October, November, December, executives at Facebook regularly asked me to help mediate conflicts they were having with Palestinians, to help the Palestinians understand, here are the policies that you cannot violate. If you do this, the content might be removed. And I was proud. I felt like, okay, this is a platform that we're going to be able to use to tell the whole world. And I think governments saw that our impact on Instagram in particular was so significant that what I thought was a safe platform for me and for Palestinians very quickly became something different. And when I was banned from the platform, I had to really understand something. So in the United States, there is such a thing as free speech. But that is, free speech means you can go out on the sidewalk and say whatever you want to say, as long as it's not a death threat or a bomb threat, as long as you're saying something legal, you can say whatever you want. But in a private business, so for instance, in this podcast studio, if someone barges in here and says, no, I'm recording my podcast now, you have the right to say, no, actually, get out of my room. No, you actually don't have the right to be here. If someone in a restaurant gets up and starts screaming, you can make that person leave. Well, Instagram is a private business, and they are allowed to remove whoever they want. And I fell into that category of somebody, even though I saw myself, I have known executives at Meta for years and years and years. I served on a committee. The lead counsel for Meta is a black man named Roy Austin. Roy Austin and I worked together on the DOJ transition team for the Biden administration. I was fighting to make sure that the DOJ had good policies on police brutality, and I worked with this man. This was before he joined the staff of Meta. There is a woman at Meta named Manar Waheed, and a brilliant attorney, and we knew Manar when she worked for the ACLU. Now Meta, this is a Muslim woman, Meta now mainly uses Manar to oppress Muslims.
How do they do that?
Well, whenever somebody has their content removed, like me, or has their account removed, they now use Manar to tell them. And so
she picks the people that...
Well, no. Someone higher than Manar chooses who they're going to suspend, but they use Manar to deliver the news. So they use a Muslim woman.
They make it cute.
Yeah, or Roy Austin is African American, Manar is a Muslim American woman, and they use these people to. It's the same way Joe Biden has an African American woman as the UN ambassador to the United States. And so this black woman goes to the UN and makes the most atrocious votes against Palestine over and over and over. She single-handedly has blocked the Security Council from stopping this genocide again and again and again. Well, because she's a black woman, it makes people say, she can't be that bad. Like, it makes people, if that was a white man doing it, people would see it and be like, that white man is the most evil human being on earth. Well, when you have a Muslim woman deliver the bad news, or an African-American man deliver the bad news, it makes that much more complicated for people. And so what I've learned to accept is that this is a private platform. I don't own it. You don't own it. And it is Mark Zuckerberg, who we now know is an open Zionist. I did not know this about him. Adam Mosseri, who's the CEO of Instagram, he is also an open Zionist. His family owns illegal lands and properties in Israel. He goes back and this is public information. And so I'm now understanding that the owners and managers of this platform, they choose their own priorities politically. And I thought mistakenly that all the support I had gotten from them for years and years, I thought that meant I was safe.
Yeah.
And I misjudged it.
What's one thing that you said that got you in most trouble?
Well, actually, the post that I made that they used to ban me was not even about Gaza. In early December, an executive at Meta, I posted this before I was banned, told me that he was in a meeting and that in this meeting they were discussing the need to find a reason to ban me. And he said, Shaun, in the meeting, they said the safest way to ban him is to tie him to terrorism. So I posted it, right? I didn't say the man's name, but right away I posted and said, I was just told that the senior leaders at Meta are just trying to find an excuse to ban me, and they know that if they tie me to terrorism, it will work. So on December the 20th, I made a very simple post. The graphic was just words. It said an open letter to the men of Yemen. And I wrote about 500 words saying thank you for stopping these ships in the Red Sea. Thank you for doing everything that you can to try to stop this genocide while most of the world sits and watches. You're putting yourself in harm's way. And they said that that was me supporting terrorism. And they banned me, not for one of the 1,000 posts I made about Gaza, but for this one post that I made about Yemen. And what was crazy is a few weeks earlier, they had removed several posts that I made, about a dozen posts, that were showing different decisions that Hamas had made. And I was covering their decisions from what I thought was a very fair, unbiased. I was telling the news. I was showing.
You were the journalist.
And a lot of times I was literally taking a video from a news website and sharing that video and writing my caption. Well, in early December, they removed every post I'd ever made. Not only if it mentioned Hamas, it didn't matter if it was negative, positive, it didn't matter. Any post I made about Hamas, they removed it. And Manar, the Muslim attorney that works for Meta, wrote and said, Shaun, Hamas is on the American terror list, and we just don't allow anything that could even be perceived as support of them on the platform. And I had to accept it, and I didn't agree with it because I didn't think what I was posting was support. And so when they then banned me and said I was supporting terrorism, I said to them, at the time, the Houthis had been removed from the American terror list 3 years ago. Joe Biden himself removed them. I said, how can you now say I'm supporting terrorism? These men were removed from the list. And here's what Meta said. They said, we also have our own list, and they are on our terror list.
They doubled down.
And so I said, what do you mean? I said, I don't, where is your list public? Am I on the list? No, I want to know. And they said, no. How am I supposed to know that I'm now violating a private list? Who knows this? And so they wanted an excuse to ban me, and they did.
That was your last string.
That was my last post.
And how has life kind of been after? Because Instagram, for most social media people, is the main center where everything goes through. It's Instagram.
It's become that, and I was proud of that. I was glad because.
Were you not gutted?
Yes, I mean, for a few months I was very bitter not because I lost an account, but this was a community that I built. Like, I had 6 million people from all over the world. It took me like 10 years to build that community. I didn't see that as numbers. I saw those as people. And I could see the statistics on the back end. These people were from 100 different countries. And so this community that I had built, to lose it instantly without warning, it wasn't just that I lost my platform. There were things that I lost that people never considered. For instance, my brother Jason passed away, and he and I had hundreds of direct messages with each other. And he had pancreatic cancer and died. And I would regularly go back and look at our messages. They're gone. there's a rapper, Nipsey Hussle, who was killed. And Nipsey and I used to text each other. And just for fun, I would go back sometimes and see the messages that we shared. My wife and kids and I, like a lot of family, we had like a group chat on Instagram where we would share goofy memes and stories. Now my family is still doing that chat, just without me. Mm-hmm. And so I lost a lot personally. I lost a lot professionally. But something else happened that I could not have predicted. So at first I was bitter, but it also removed a lot of noise from my life, good and bad noise. All the hatred disappeared, all the goodwill and compliments disappeared as well. And suddenly my life was very, very quiet. And I think had I not been banned from Instagram, that there is a real chance that I would not have embraced Islam. That if I was still on Instagram, I would probably have 10 million followers by now. I would still be posting 20 hours a day the way I was. I would still be trying to hold politicians accountable and still just doing what I was doing.
Sounds like an exhausting lifestyle.
Well, it was exhausting, but Allah knows best. And, you know, this phrase I hear people say, I never heard this phrase before. They'll say, Allah is the best of planners. And I now truly, honestly believe that they didn't mean this to do me any favors. What they did was unjust. But because I was removed from the platform, it caused me to rethink, well, who am I? My identity was so tied to this platform.
At Shaun King,
yeah.
How we started this
and
conversation.
so now I am clearly not at Shaun King. Well, who is Shaun? What do I believe? What do I stand for? What do I care about? Who do I care about? And it allowed me to very clearly, before I was banned, in November, I started meeting with Sheikh Omar Suleiman about becoming a Muslim. And we met privately and we talked privately. I talked with many other teachers and imams and advisors. And so for me, it was several months in the making. But once I was removed from Instagram, it allowed me to see myself and my role in the world a lot clearer. And now I say, if me being banned from Instagram played even a tiny role in me becoming a Muslim, then I'm glad they removed me. And I would not trade it for the world. And I would rather be a Muslim than have 100 million followers on Instagram. And I would rather be a Muslim and never be allowed on the platform again. I'd rather be a Muslim in the middle of the desert than
be a Muslim.
Yeah, than apologize for what I said, than come out and not be myself. The path I'm on, I love this path more than the path I was on, and so I accept it.
I'm just gonna ask you one more question. You've been an activist. You've been talking about issues for a while now. If I tell you you have a dying, like you're about to die, one last plea, one last message, all these years of activism, a dying wish for the people that used to listen to you, what would that be?
Man, that's a profound question. I think the answer is easy for me, and I think I see. Let me. I'm going to give you a clear answer, but let me draw a circle to get there. I used to teach a course on Islam. I have been a friend of Muslims for most of my adult life. The day I became a Muslim felt radically different than all of the days where I had been a friend of Muslims. And what I see, and I have a real sympathy for people who see this and don't understand. Islam is not, yes, read about Islam. Read about the history of Islam. Study the books. Study, be a friend of Muslims. But Islam at its core is something to be lived and be practiced. So for all these years that I knew what the religion was, being a Muslim is radically different than reading about it. And so it shocks people to see how much Islam means to me and means to my wife and to my family. And the reason they don't understand it, I have sympathy for, because I would not have understood it.
You understand why they don't.
I understand why. And so I see people say, I think Shaun is brainwashed, or I think the Muslims have brainwashed him. And I say, no. I see the world clearly. And no one has brainwashed me. No one has even attempted to do any such thing. Or I see people say, I can't believe Shaun made his wife become a Muslim. Listen.
Hurtful.
My wife would not have become a Muslim if I made her under no circumstance. Allah worked on her heart without me. I've said this publicly. I met with a group of Muslim men in Edmonton, Canada. And I told them that one of the only reasons I had not become a Muslim was that I thought it was going to drive a wedge between my wife and I. She was a devout Christian. I met my wife in church. Her mother, who lives with us, in her mother's Christianity, women can be ministers. Her mother is a Christian minister and lives in our house. And I told the brothers, I said, I think my wife may leave me if I become a Muslim, or it may drive such a wedge. And the brothers said something to me that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And I've practiced this many times since. I said, what should I say to my wife? And the brother said, Shaun, don't say anything, but trust Allah. Trust that Allah will guide her heart. Trust that Allah will bring her closer. And they said, Shaun, if you say something, you might ruin it. Not to be disrespectful to me, they said, Shaun, it's much more likely that you will mess it up, but Allah will not mess it up. The minute I got out of the way and just started trusting that Allah would work in whatever way Allah would work to bring my wife to Islam, day by day, my wife, her heart began to soften. Almost 2 months later, it was my wife who woke up in bed. She had been reading the Quran all night long while I was asleep. It was not me saying this to my wife. My wife looked at me and said, Shaun, I think we should become Muslims. We. Brother, it was like a miracle. I would have bet $10 million that this woman would never be a Muslim. And she did not become a Muslim because of one word I said to her. She arrived there on her own. And so you asked, with my dying words, of course I would want my family to know how much I love them and cared about them. But I would want the members of my family and the world to know just how much I would want them to become Muslims. And
your dying plea to the world
would be to accept Islam. I want my kids to embrace it.
You're thinking about your parents.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my mother, about my closest friends. Like, I actually believe this. And when you are a practicing Muslim, there's nothing you want more for the people you love than for them to become Muslims. Now listen, I'll close with this. When I traveled, even today, I went to a conference, a Muslim conference here in the city today. I spoke at the Islamic Center of Detroit last night. Everywhere I go, Muslim men and women come to me and say, Shaun, I prayed for you. Some people say months. Other people say, Shaun, I've been praying for 10 years that you would become a Muslim. And when they say it, they say, Shaun, it was because I respected you, because I loved you, that I thought, I wish this man would become a Muslim. And every time I hear it, it almost brings me to tears, because to love Islam and to love someone is to want them to have what you have. And people who may listen to this now or years from now, and they're not Muslims, they would never understand how much peace it gives us, how much joy it gives us. People have no idea how happy Muslims are simply to see each other. to be in each other's presence. There is never in my life have I been so close to so many men. Muslim men, we are affectionate with one another. We hug one another. We may even kiss each other's cheeks.
It's part of culture.
Yeah, we put each other's hands on each other's neck and say, I'm glad to see you. And because we know that we're not trying to have an intimate relationship with each other, we're just brothers. And so Muslim men support men in ways I've never experienced before. And
it's real brotherhood.
Yeah, it is. And again, if you've never experienced it, it may be hard for you to understand. But for us, it's not hard at all. Someone's knocking on the door, probably telling us we've got to go.
Yeah. Thank you, Shaun. I really appreciate the time. And when you're back in town, we'll do a part 2, inshallah.
Please, let's do it. Yeah, inshallah. Good to see you, man.
You too, brother.